via our Cape Town studios, I believe. Thanks very much, Mr. Peterson, for your time. I hope you've been listening in on this discussion we've been having around Eskom. Does this plan say enough about turning around this SOE that's already cost the country billions and billions of rands?
Good morning, Michelle, and thanks for having me on your show. In terms of the plan, I think we focus more broadly on the electricity sector and its role in supporting economic growth. And of course, Eskom is a critical part of that, being responsible for the bulk of our electricity generation. Of course, we have some renewable energy producers as well, where costs are declining quite rapidly and that have an important role to play in our energy mix. I would say that in terms of this particular plan, we focus much more broadly on the reform of the electricity sector and how a reformed electricity sector with Eskom at its center can support long-run economic growth.
Does the report talk enough about this issue around the current rate of tariff increases and perhaps how that is chasing away possible investment into the country?
In fact, the report does reflect work that we have done recently within the National Treasury, as well as with some of our other partners in a broader research grouping called South Africa Towards Inclusive Economic Growth, where we've actually looked at tariff tipping points and we've looked at the implications of the existing tariff trajectory for both households and businesses. And what we are finding, and that is summarized in the report, is that there is a tension between the overall sustainability of Eskom and the tariffs that Eskom require in order to remain sustainable, as well as the implications that that has for households and firms and their willingness to defect off the grid.
Yeah, because it's 25%. That's the tariff increase that Eskom needs, isn't it, to start performing optimally, and that's the tariff that households simply cannot be expected to shoulder.
Well, and I think that's why what we need to put at the center of this discussion is, of course, Eskom and its sustainability, but also the broader electricity sector. And I would just like to point out that I think what's important is that the energy sector is one of the areas that we cover in the report when we look at network industries more broadly, water, telecommunications, and transport. And I think it's also worthwhile pointing out that as part of the diagnosis which these interventions respond to, of course, we are looking at the overall decline in productivity and in economic growth. And what we've done is put together a series of interventions that we think, including in the electricity sector and other parts of the economy, that we think can put the economy on a higher growth path. We are publishing this paper and distributing it widely for public comment. Elements of it have been discussed at various fora within government, and we've previously articulated some of these ideas in the medium-term budget policy statement and in the budget, and we are embarking on a process to consult and have started a process, in fact, already of consulting ministers, premiers, MECs for finance, and other departments to make sure that what comes out of this is actually a holistic set of policy interventions that can place us on a higher growth path.
Yeah, and practical steps that we can take, not in the long term, but sort of immediately, not even in the medium term, immediate steps that we can take to get to this 3% growth rate that the Minister talks about in this blueprint that he's formulated for the country's economy. The issue around small business, that's also mentioned, and we've talked about it so many times around small business being the answer to job creation. Does this document say anything new other than supporting small businesses?
Well, what we've tried to articulate in this document, Michelle, is at a very granular level, how can we support the emergence of entrepreneurs and small businesses? And I think some of the initiatives that the President's already announced, which we reflect in the document, such as the ease of doing business and making it easier for small business to flourish, that finds its way in there. But we also look at quite specific issues around exclusive leases in the retail sector and what that means for the emergence of small business. We look at issues in regulatory provisions in telecommunications that are preventing, for example, a faster shift to broadband and fiber penetration. So what we've tried to do is sort of look at quite specific issues that we think will allow small businesses who have an important contribution to make to the economy to flourish and for entrepreneurs to emerge.
Just some of the issues contained in this blueprint for our economy. Thanks very much for your time. Duncan Peterser is Acting DDG of Economic Policy at National Treasury.